Okay, so before we can move on to actually designing the 8-week plan, we need to just revisit the SMART goals because we need to consider the general adaptation syndrome and how long it will take the client to actually get physiological change. So the first goal is time bound to 6 weeks. So if we go over it again, it's to increase the client's chest size and their arm size and improve a 2 kilometer rower score. So clearly there needs to be some form of chest exercises in there, some form of arm exercises in there. They need to abide by the hypertrophy guidelines for the ACSM. And we also need to make sure that we're trying to work on the client's aerobic fitness for their rower score as well. So quite a lot to consider or to plan towards. As you see me move down the pages, we're going to get to the 8-week plan template or the overview. So into the overview, I need to write down exactly what I plan to do in each week and how I'm going to progress that workout across the 8 weeks. Now we already know that I need to include a minimum of 4 resistance training systems, 2 cardiovascular training systems and a core exercise in each week. So in week 1, bearing in mind that my client David has already trained in the gym, so he does already have some gym experience. So in week 1, we're going to perform 2 days of resistance training and 2 days of CV training. My client is going to train using a whole body approach, so he's not going to split up his body. The RT training system is supersets. The CV training system is continuous. The core exercise is a side plank. In week 2, there's still going to be 2 days of resistance training and 2 days of CV training. So that's going to remain pretty much constant throughout the whole 8 weeks. And my client is still going to use a whole body approach because they're training on 2 days a week. And this time the training system is going to be supersets with forced repetitions in the final set. So in the final set of each exercise, the client's going to perform forced repetitions, which just means that I'm going to help them and spot the concentric phase of the exercise, progressing the workout and giving them a little bit more overload. The core exercise will be side planks and front plank. In week 3, I'm not going to change anything. I'm going to leave the workout exactly the same. Because you've got to remember, my client David, he's having a new stimulus to his training. And if I keep progressing everything, the risk of injury rises rapidly. And in week 4, I'm going to keep everything the same for his resistance training. But I'm going to change his CV. So his CV training for the first 3 weeks is going to be kept the same. So I just need to indicate that. in here, and I also need to do the same in here. And then when we get to week 4, I'm going to make a change to his CV, and we're now going to start to use fartlek, so a bit more of a randomized workout where I can change the intensities for my client and push him, because obviously he needs to improve his rower score. Now, when we get into week 5, I need to start now thinking about the other 2 remaining resistance training systems that I'm going to use. So in week 5, what I've opted for here is to push my client on to be using eccentric repetition or eccentric training in the last set of each exercise. So this bit remains the same. 2 days of CV training, 2 days of resistance training. And I'm going to copy this section here, place it a little bit further down, and here force repetitions and eccentric in the final set of each exercise. Oh, not each, of some exercises. And I'll explain that a little bit more later on. This time the core exercise will remain the same, and the CV training system again will remain the same. In week 6, I'm going to give my client a little bit of a deload. So I'm actually now going to revert back to the same training the client did in week 1. The exact same workout, because if I've progressed them or made the workouts harder and harder as the weeks go on, if we think about the body needs to recover, by saying, okay, we'll go back to the first training week, it's dropping the intensity right the way back down, and that's going to allow for some of those changes to take place, especially when my client's been changing his nutrition for the first 6 weeks as well. So far we've used 3 resistance training systems. We've used supersets, force repetitions, eccentric training. We've used 2 CV approaches, which are continuous and fartlek. And now I'm going to really push it up a little bit. So I'm hoping that my client has already taken off some time from his 2,000 meter rower, because he's been doing continuous training, pushing him quite hard at different intensities. He's been performing fartleks, which is a randomized intensity, and he should be starting to get some hypertrophy because we've been using supersets with forced reps and eccentrics, so taking those muscles to fatigue. What I'm now going to do is have a little look back up at my medium-term goals for fitness, and he's still got to increase his chest size, and he's still looking to improve his rower score as well. So now I'm just going to start to push the client a little bit harder in week 7 and week 8. So for week 7, the first thing I'm going to do is keep the CV training and resistance training the same, because obviously my client's only got a certain amount of time that he can train each day around his work and around his football. Also, still going to use a whole body approach to training. So I need to include that information here. But this time, the RT training system will be pyramids. And I'm going to keep the CV training exactly the same as it was in week 5 in terms of the training system, but I may well change the intensity to push them a little bit harder. And the core exercises will be cable wood chops. And in week 8, I'm going to leave everything the same, but I'm going to push the client just that little bit harder in terms of the intensities and the rest periods, and maybe even exercise complexity. So here I've got an overview of what's going to happen. We're going to read through it for the final time. In week 1 we've got 2 days of resistance training and 2 days of cardiovascular training. My client is going to train using a whole body approach. The resistance training system is supersets. The CV training system is continuous, and the core exercise is a side plank. In week 2, again, we've got 2 days of resistance training and 2 days of CV training. My client is going to train using a whole body approach. The training systems are going to be supersets and forced repetitions in the final set. The CV training system is continuous, and the core exercise will be side planks and a front plank. In week 3, we're missing some information here. We've got 2 days of resistance training and 2 days of CV training. My client is going to train using a whole body approach. It's going to use supersets and forced repetitions in the final set. And the CV training system is continuous, and the core exercise will be side planks and front planks. So that week looks very much the same as the previous week. In week 4, again, we've got 2 days of resistance training and we've got 2 days of cardiovascular training. My client is going to train using a whole body approach. The training systems are going to be supersets and force reps in the final set. The core exercise will be planks and front plank. And now there's a change to the CV training system where my client is going to be using a fartlek training approach. In week 5, my client has got 2 days of resistance training and 2 days of cardiovascular training. Whole body approach, supersets with force reps and eccentrics in the final set. So we've got that third resistance training system in there. We've got core exercises as side planks and front planks, and the CV training system has remained at fartlek. In week 6, we've reverted the training back to the first week, where it's a deload week, giving my client the opportunity to recover. 2 days of resistance training, 2 days of cardiovascular training, whole body approach. The resistance training system is supersets, and the CV training is continuous, and the core exercise is side planks. In week 7, we've got 2 days of resistance training, 2 days of cardiovascular training. The client is going to train using a whole body approach. The resistance training system now is going to change to pyramid, so that's that fourth resistance training system. The CV training system is remaining at fartleks, which is where it was in week 5. And the core exercise is now a cable wood chop, or cable wood chops. In week 8, we've got 2 days of resistance training, 2 days of CV training, whole body approach. The resistance training system is going to remain at pyramids. The CV training system is a fartlek, and the core exercise or exercises are cable wood chops. So now we've got a complete overview of what will happen in that 8-week plan, and in the next video you'll actually see me designing the 8-week plan itself.